All right, so welcome everybody to our fireside chat. Just to start off, I want to let everyone know that the setup for today is John and I are going to have a bit of a discussion up here where we go through the episodes together, and he shares with us his thoughts as he remembers or as he reflects on them. And once we're done with all of the episodes and the revival, we will open the couch up to welcome people to come up. And if they have any further questions or any further comments, you're more than welcome to at that point. John, we're going to stick with our rating system from the last two ones.
Yes.
So
I mean,
if you're.
I'm fully ready to rate these first too. You know I am.
I know. So just a refresher on the rating system. 5 is loved it. It's a fave. I can watch it all the time. 4 is I remember it well and fondly. 3, it's okay. Neither love it nor hate it. 2, I need a lot of reminding of what happened in it. 1, I could totally never watch it again and it would be okay.
Yeah.
All right. Also, so we're starting with season 7. It has been a little while, so before we even start anything, do you remember season 6? It was the whole introduction of April. There
Mhm.
was a little bit of tension about Chris being
Mhm.
involved in Lorelai and Rory's life. Then April came in. Then Luke
Yep.
kept her a secret.
Mhm.
And Lorelai issued Luke an ultimatum of it's now and never, and he couldn't answer. And the last thing we see is she knocks on Christopher's door. Before you started season 7, do you remember what you were thinking would happen or wanted to happen or where you wanted it to go?
Well, I remember season 6 very well. I loved season 6. I might say it's my favorite. Well, no, I think I've said it before. I think it's my favorite season. It was so dramatic, so full of tension. You know, I totally get that it might not be a season for folks to return to the idyllic town of Stars Hollow, but for me, like it was a narrative roller coaster, and I love that. Um, Lorelai, the end of season 6 is when I really became very strongly attached to Lorelai, and she became a real favorite character. Because as you know, like early seasons, Lorelai annoyed me a lot. Um, and yeah, ultimatum. That's like an interesting way to put it. I mean, she was like a crumble. Like she was like a crumbled memento there at the end of that.
Wow.
At the end of that season, of that scene, just walking away like a zombie. Um, yeah, it was powerful, and I I don't know what I expected, but um I think I understood that what we were going to get from her and Christopher starting off was going to be something a little like phony, like not real. Um, which I it was confirmed to be true. Like she begins season 7 just basically like trying to sneak out of the room. Like just like basically a booty call. Um, and and I I guess I assumed that um, that Luke would be. I thought that Luke wouldn't. It surprised me at the beginning of season 7. I guess I'll say this: that Luke became so freaked out that he was losing Lorelai. I kind of imagined Luke to be a little bit more like strongly focused on what was going on with him and April. So the kind of like freak out that he has there when he comes to her house and whatnot and tells her like I changed my mind, we should get married. Blah, blah, blah. That was a surprise because I didn't expect that. Um, I guess I did expect a bit of a mess, you know, like I did expect there to just be like a mess of feelings, and in that way, I was right, like because the beginning of season 7 is a mess. um, you know, it's an emotional mess, including stuff like that, including like you know Luke just kind of also kind of freaking out, and then when he learns that she slept uh, with Christopher, and just you know just it season 7 kind of opens with like a pit in your stomach, and I feel like the first at least first half of the season is like one of those like love like those dark love pits, you know, that like heartbreak, and then that kind of starts to become like a little bit of like that numb feeling after like the initial heartbreak starts to like wear off.
Okay, so that seems like a good place to pick up then.
Yeah.
Let's go through. So we have episode 1.
Yeah.
Rory tries to understand the love rocket that Logan leaves as we open up. He open up this.
Yep.
He's gone, and Lorelai has to deal with the aftermath of her decisions with both Chris, who wants to talk about things and make it a little bit more than it is, and Luke, who eventually shows up ready to run off. There is a red light camera being installed in the town, which causes Kirk to basically drive and destroy Luke's diner.
Hmm. Yep.
What do you think?
One. I mean, you know this. This episode's. I thought this episode stunk. I really didn't like it at all. I mean, I feel bad saying it because there's you know a creative on the other end of making that of creating that episode, and so it's hard to say something negative. But that's the nature of what we're doing here tonight. And I have to be honest, I did not like this episode at all. You know, and it wasn't like anything that specifically happened in the episode. I actually thought like narratively what they were building could have worked, you know. At least it could have worked for me. You know, this episode might have been fine for other people. I'm just saying for me, I didn't like it, and mostly it was I thought the pacing was just absolutely completely unfamiliar to me. Like you know, in terms of Gilmore Girls, you had these long scenes that were like super undynamic. Just two people sitting on a in the gazebo talking for like 5 minutes. You know, without really any like movement or anything, just sort of sitting there, or in rooms. You know, that scene with I think it was this episode where Rory comes home and there's like is this one the one with the kimono and like all of the stuff around and
No,
Lorelai
no, not yet.
is that two because two is
That's
just
2. Yeah.
yeah because two's got the same problems. You know, just these weird pacing things that just didn't really fit with you know the cadence and the you know the actual vocal, just even the vocal cadence of it. It felt like I mean it felt thin. The episode felt thin. I you know obviously that big Kirk driving into the into Luke Steiner, that's where I think most of the creative energy seems to have been put into the episode. um Uh, if I'm correct, this is the episode where Lorelai and Luke meet in the supermarket, like in like the frozen section.
No, no, that's also the next episode. So I think
That's
you've
also
got
the next
those 2
episode.
episodes together. So why don't I talk about 2 episodes and you can talk about them
Well, I
throughout.
mean, to me, that both those episodes just like they just both felt. It wasn't until episode 3 that I was like, oh, okay, that's the show that I remember, you know. But both those episodes just felt like from a rhythm perspective, just seemed really really off. The um, yeah, it just I wasn't into this episode.
Okay. So that's what you get, folks, for making Whoopi. So aside from what you mentioned, where Luke and Lorelai meet and make peace in the grocery store, they actually meet and kind of say, "Let's just walk away, knowing we're
Right?
okay," kind of thing.
Because the first episode, that is where we learn, where Luke learns that she slept with
Yeah,
Christopher, right?
yeah. So
Yes,
he in the second
because
episode he drives over for the punch.
yeah, because that also just felt a little rushed. It was like, last episode he's like, no, I'm not doing that. Like I can't. And then like suddenly like next day he's like, completely freaking out. Or at least it felt like the next day or very shortly after. My memory might not be right. It might not have been the next day, but it doesn't matter because that's sort of just from a cadence perspective how we would feel, for with the character sort of flipping from one personality type to the next. Felt weird. It just it felt very off.
Yeah, no, I get that. And then
And
this is
also,
also
some of the jokes also didn't really land, if I remember correctly. Like there was like just some like little quips that felt like just they didn't feel quite what we remember. And I don't think that I'm projecting. I really do not think that I'm projecting this idea that Amy just wasn't there to rewrite the jokes. I truly felt something very, very different because then suddenly, starting around episode 3, I was like, oh, that's okay. That is different. That feels like the show that I know.
yeah. So any thoughts on the very controversial move of getting Zach and Lane pregnant? Because that's when they come back from their honeymoon with a parasite.
Well, I always, always, always loved that line that Brian has. Like I remember reading it in the script when I got the script and being like, "Oh, that's going to be funny. I know how to deliver that line." And it didn't disappoint. It was really it was a fun little moment. Um, I'm trying to think whether or not I'm influenced by the watch and by everyone else's perspective on Lane's pregnancy. I'm I'm there with I think most folks, which is that it's a bummer that she was given that narratively because it like kind of derails what could have been with the character, which I sense probably, especially now after having watched it, is what Amy likely wanted there to be for the character, whether we'd ever see it or not, or whether it just like the end the series knowing that it's going to happen. This like this life of being an artist and creating and it's so clear that Lane was that in the cast. She was representing that like that adventurer, that that wanderer, that person who's like who goes off and and makes a life of creation and exploration, and that was taken away from her in season 7. And I don't and I recognize that for sure, and I think it's a bummer. I'm trying to figure out. I can't really remember whether or not that's how I felt when I was watching it, or if that's how I felt once we had discussions about it, once people started to talk about that. And if I'm being honest, I have a feeling that I wasn't quite as aware of it until I spoke to all of you.
That's fair. I mean, like you mentioned before, you didn't really know the the episodes and the scripts as much, so that's
Well, I
totally
didn't know
fair.
that storyline. I mean, I knew that she had twins. I knew that she had kids. I knew that Brian, what Brian's involvement in some of those scenes were going to be. But I don't know if I really gave it much thought of like how does this affect the narrative? Because like I didn't really see the whole narrative. I only knew the scenes that I was in, and I mentioned this while we were watching the show about how when season 6 and season 7 came around, uh, that was when Brian was being used less and less in the context of Zach and Brian. In early seasons, Zach and Brian were like Lenny and Squiggy. They were like a little comic duo.
And
And
they came
once they
together as a package. If you had
exactly,
one,
they
you
came
had the
together
other.
as a package. So when Todd would write me a text message saying, dude, has your agent called you? Like, like we always sort of imagine, like if he got the call for an episode, I knew I was getting a call as well, and we kind of knew, like, that our agents were probably going to be negotiating similar terms. Like, just I just sort of felt like he and I were kind of one thing when it came to the show early on, and once they started to, uh, once they came up with this idea of bringing him in as a love interest, we started to see that evaporate. When it first started, they could use Brian in really fun comic ways to, to sort of to spice that up, right? But eventually, it has to be about their relationship. Once the courting is over and all the ways that you could use Brian are over, it has to be about the relationship. And as that started to take over, as it rightfully should, I was being called less and less to be a part of those episodes. Or actually, no, that's not true. I wasn't being called less and less. He was being called more and more. I actually, my average number of episodes per season never actually changed. His did. And that was a little hard for me, I remember at the time. I remember being very insecure about that, feeling like, he do they like his performance better? Is it did he become friends with them? Because very often, like, just yeah, how people are used on a show is correlates with how well you get along with the creators and the showrunners and the writers and all that stuff. And I thought, am I just not personable enough? Have I not developed a good enough relationship with Amy and Dan that they are thinking about roles and things and ways to use me? When we got to season 6 and that all of that started to happen, I remember feeling very nervous about watching this because I was afraid that that some of those feelings were going to return. But what happened was the opposite. Because I was so invested in the story and not really invested in, like, my own job and ego and all of that kind of stuff, I really loved the storyline of Zach and Lane, kind of falling in love and building a life together and all that stuff. So, um, I actually really enjoyed it. That's part of why part of one of the many reasons why season 6 is probably my favorite season, because I really loved all of that. And then that continued into season 7, and I would say that although I totally get it. I totally understand this sort of big bummer of giving her that, giving her twins or getting her pregnant, but then just also making it absolutely certain, like, and twins as well. If it's gonna be about the peak of what you can, like, we're not letting you out of the house is basically what it is. You're not gonna go off on any adventures anymore. Sorry. I did, and I get that. I get that that's a bummer for the character in some ways, but I also became very invested in the Lane and Zach storyline in season 7. I might even say even a little more than in season 6. Um, a lot of that stuff without Brian was, I'd never seen it. I didn't know that it existed, right? Like, I mean, I kind of maybe thought that it did, but I didn't really think much of it. And I got to watch those scenes and really enjoy them as an audience member, and I love them, and I'm glad Brian wasn't a part of any of that. It would have completely distracted, and some of, like, we'll get to the episode, but, like, there's the episode with, like, Lane and Zach where they're walking back from Dosie's and they stop in, like, the gazebo area, and he talks to her about you know
Oh yeah,
you can
we're definitely gonna get to
anyway,
that.
like, that was a powerful moment for me, like, with the relationship and whatnot. I really loved it, and it gave me a different perspective from a lot of the negativity and anger about her having been given that. Anyway, We're still on episode 2 though. That's a 1. That's a oneer.
All right. So then let's move on. I had already put the one down. I was like, this is just a confirmation.
I would say
Um,
that that scene in the grocery store in the frozen section, to me, is the most out for me, again, is the most out of character moment in the entire series. Like, it just felt like it didn't belong in Gilmore Girls. Not that the scene had any problems. It just, it like in any other show or in another show, it might have worked perfectly fine. But within the context of Gilmore Girls, it just seemed so out of place. Everything from the location to the pacing of their dialogue. Just everything about it seemed very odd. There were I think, a couple of like attempts for humor in it that fell flat. But I guess the counter argument that I know some were saying is that was sort of the point. These two episodes are supposed to feel like kind of different because we're supposed to, be in Lorelei's head, and Lorelei is in this almost kind of like, discombobulated, numb state. So that's these two episodes might sort of reflect that. I guess I could probably follow that logic, but my gut just tells me, yeah, don't like these episodes.
okay. All right. So then hopefully we'll get some more higher numbers now.
Hmm.
We have Lorelei's first cotillion. Um, Lorelai tells Emily and Richard about the breakup and is surprised by the underwhelming reaction, which throws Lorelai off as she starts doubting if she really likes what she likes or whether she likes things because she knew Emily would not. Um, Emily and Richard are personally overseeing the preparation for societal living for a group of young girls, which causes Emily to throw a few tea parties at the Dragonfly. In the process, Michelle asks to be brought to the cotillion. Rory attempts sexting to keep up with the odd hours with Logan in London, and Luke reopens his diner while Lane remains in denial of the news of her pregnancy before telling Zach. Chris comes back and professes his feelings for Lorelai. This is also where we get Luke's new black hat, which I remember caused a lot of discussion,
Oh God,
and
yeah.
the classic line, "Where are you going? I'm gonna see Brian. Brian must be freaking out."
Right. Uh, okay. Can I rewind really quickly and just add one more thing about episode 1
Sure.
because I just was reminded of it. I am still I'm still of the opinion that the Love Rocket, like, whole Love Rocket thing, didn't work and felt forced and felt stapled on top. Like the fact that it just kind of this big, huge thing that came out of nowhere. This time that they spent together, and it just seemed a little stapled on for me. Anyway, just moving forward, just because you reminded me with the sexting thing. Um, this was this was the episode where Brian says about the parasite. No,
No, no,
no,
no. The
no, it's not.
parasite comment is in. He says you maybe it's the parasite.
But is that
Yes,
in?
yes, it's in this episode.
It's in
Yes,
this
you're.
episode because it's
Yes,
around that scene is when she walks in.
yes, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and then and yeah, I mean, I mean, talking about the stuff with Zach and Brian in this episode, I think it's like, some of the best Zach and Brian stuff in the entire series is that stuff where they're talking about, his what's going on in his marriage, and Lane, and and then, I mean, just some of the comedy stuff is just great. Some of the physical comedy. Um, I really enjoyed watching that. I've said that I've always been a little uncomfortable watching my own performance, but that episode is like one of my favorite ones that I watched of my performance. It's like on par with the you jump I jump, you jump I jump Jack, where with the little butt wiggle, and the the over the shoulder. But this is one of my favorite, or probably, yeah, this one and that one are my two favorites. Um, I'm going to give this one a 3. It's sort of in between a 2 and a 3 because there are aspects of it that are a little hazy. I kind of remember it. I certainly remember all of the Cotillion stuff, and I remember the Michelle wanting to go, and but I don't really remember it like in terms of how I feel about it, I guess, and that's probably closer to a 2 than a 3. Then it's not that I dislike the episode, but even though it does, you know what? I'm going to give it a 3 because it's got like my favorite stuff with Zach and Brian.
All right, we're going with a 3 then.
Yeah,
Okay,
let's do a 3.
so next episode is wonderful. It's marvelous. After
Yes,
Chris takes Lorelai on a bunch of bad movie dates, he makes up with it with a drive-in with a convertible car and her favorite movie, Funny Face.
yes. I
April
I
comes. Sorry.
I like
April
this episode.
comes to live with Luke while Anna is away taking care of her mother, and Richard takes a job as a visiting lecturer at Yale, which causes Emily to go to a party without him and get arrested after refusing to take a breathalyzer. Yale restarts for Rory as editor of the Yale Daily News, and she ends up making some new friends to fill the void of Logan, named Lucy and Olivia.
I like this episode. This is a higher one for me. This is like a 4. This is around a 4, maybe a little higher than a 4.
What would
I
you say
enjoyed it.
were your favorite parts are? What do you remember vividly?
I loved. I mean, say what you will about Christopher, and I get it, and I'm there with the like those two are not right for each other. Season 7 was fun for that though, like to watch that relationship, sort of fizzle out in season 7. Thought they did it really really well, and they needed an episode like this, like a high like this, um, for us to get to the final moment of their relationship in the season. So I really loved it. I loved that drive-in theater moment. I remember just being so full of joy watching that. Um, and I thought that the new two new friends were an interesting new addition, I guess. I remember sort of feeling like, oh, I remember those two because I remember them from the set. Just didn't really know what they were, um, and how they played into the story at all. Uh, Sorry, refresh me on some of the other stuff that you were saying.
So we have April coming to live
Oh,
with
right,
Luke
right, right,
while
right,
Anna's away.
right. And you know how I feel about the April and Luke stuff. I really, that's very high up on my list of plot lines that I really truly enjoy. Despite the fact that it gets in the way of this relationship that gets derailed, that I know a lot of fans are bummed that it gets derailed and see April's storyline as the storyline that we're getting instead of it, and probably also the storyline that causes us to not get the other one. But I enjoy that. Maybe it's because I relate to Luke as a father figure, and I'm a new father. I don't know, but I really like that stuff, and it was fun to see her staying there.
Cool. All right. So that brings us to the Great Stink. The town smells of pickles due to a train derailment a few towns over. Chris shares with Lorelai that Sherry wants back in Gigi's life, and they disagree about how to proceed with her request. Logan comes back to town, and Rory gets to meet his team, including the never before described as a woman, Bobby. Lorelai and Chris have their first Friday night dinner with the Gilmores, which results in Chris asking Lorelai to come with him to Paris. Fun things we have in this episode is Emily's mugshot gets referred to, and her request for doubles tennis is almost fulfilled until Lorelai comes to her mind, back to her.
Hmm. I didn't dislike this episode, and I remember all of it. Um, but I don't know if I would say like it, had me like
It's okay.
super. Yeah, I'd say okay. I'd say I'd give it a 3.
Yeah.
Um, I like that. I really enjoyed that moment when she walks up onto the roof and finds him there. That's how he shows
Yes.
himself to her.
Yeah. He
I,
surprised.
I, I really I really like that moment. I think if I remember correct, I could kind of sense it was coming. Um,
Well, yeah. You felt something was
I was
weird.
like, something's
Yeah.
coming, something's happening, and it was like, there it is, there it is. Um, I don't. The coworkers were kind of interesting, but like, I don't know if I was like it really like hooked me any. Uh, that all that stuff with um with Lorelai and Christopher, wanting to go to wanting to give Sherry a chance, and showing her the letter and all of that kind of stuff. I thought that was really interesting, and I loved our discussions about that, in the context of April and Luke, and like how Lorelai was never given that kind of sense of involvement in Luke and April, whereas here he's like begging for her involvement in it. It's kind of interesting. But then of course, like, her actual, the line, the line that she takes on it, like, that kind of upsets him early on, right? Like, that kind of upsets Christopher a bit,
Yeah.
which sort of shows us why, because she is, at heart, she has opinions, and that's, I think, part of why Luke was so resistant to allowing her to kind of come in, because he knew that, like, that is likely, once given that freedom to be a part of it, that she would probably lead, I guess, and he wanted to lead.
Well, he did mention once that he thought that April would like her more, and that
He said that he
yeah.
definitely said that she would overshadow him, in April's eyes. But I'm just going a little further, and saying I think that he also understands Lorelai's natural instinct to want to sort of like push her opinions on that. And she's a mother. She's experienced mother. She's gone through now, 20, almost 20 years of raising a child, so he knows that her, it would be hard for him to argue against her opinions, and he's a new father, and he would like to experience that himself.
Hmm. Okay. Shall we go on to the next episode?
Yeah.
All right. The next one is Go Bulldogs. It's Yale
Yes.
Parents Weekend. And Chris convinces Lorelai to go and explore, where he struggles to reconcile with the type of father he wasn't in the past. And to help make up, he takes all of the Yale Daily News to lunch, in the process getting them drunk and working up a great appetite for creme brulee.
Yes.
Meanwhile, Luke takes swimming lessons from Coach Bennett and gets a date and realizes maybe he didn't want to go out on a date after all. On a side note, we have Kirk feeling like he's getting smothered by Lulu, and Suki accepts veggie from a new supplier, which if I remember correctly, you had very strong feelings about.
Did I? I mean, that was clearly like it was all about like whether she was cheating on Jackson, kind of
Yes,
thing.
exactly. And I felt like you, if I remember correctly, you felt like that was actually a form of cheating.
Right. I mean, I think maybe it was like it was a form of cheating because she felt like it was a form of cheating, and so if that's how she feels, and she's not like, and she's if she's feeling guilty about that but still doing it, then technically like she's kind of cheating, I guess. It's interesting because this was the episode. This was the episode that we had Devin with us. Correct.
Yes,
Correct.
yes,
That he watched this episode with us.
yeah.
Um, and the creme brulee moment, I guess, I think that got built up by all of you a bit more, or something because I was really waiting for something huge with creme brulee, and it didn't end up being as big as I thought it was going to be.
Hmm. I mean, just I think the biggest thing was how often they were mentioning creme brulee and how upset they were that they didn't get their creme brulee. And then
Right.
you get that scene like the table's empty and the guy shows up with 10 pots of creme brulee to the table.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that was the comedy bit that.
Yeah. It was a funny little moment. Uh,
So how do
we
you feel
have
about this episode? Sorry.
I'm going to give this one a 3 as well.
Yeah.
It's sort of like I remember most of it, but it's not like it was. It was fun. It was a fun episode because I remember it was fun having Devin with us, and he talked to us a little bit about like the realism of the actual Yale set and all of that. That was really cool. And maybe because Devin was with us, I was maybe a little more focused on some of those little details and didn't absorb the full episode. But you know me, I also like I'm looking for these like big moments, and I don't really remember any big moments here. Like I didn't. This episode didn't have like it didn't have like Richard's scary end.
No.
Uh, it didn't have the drive-in. Didn't have what I like to call the trailer moments, the moments that we see in the trailers.
Right. Okay. The next episode you're gonna know so well. I don't know that I need to say much on it. It's the French twist,
Ah, yes, the French twist.
or I think it's
Um,
French twist. I put in there, but
it's called French Twist. Yeah.
yeah,
Uh, that that was the episode that I shadowed.
exactly.
I shadowed Lee, the director. So I remember that episode from the inside. Uh, I believe I was also in the episode, which I had forgotten. I had the moment where correct me if I'm wrong, where or maybe I just shot it while we were doing that because I do remember that I while shadowing had to then get into makeup and do something else, but maybe it wasn't for that episode. Maybe they were shooting it for something else. But it's this moment where Lane says, "Zach, where's Brian?"
Yep,
And then we just cut to Brian like just at just
another family.
Korean lunch with like
Yeah, yeah, because
uh
that's when they tell Mrs. Kim, and she wants them to move in with her, and they say no, we're adults, so she moves in with them, and they were like, and that's when like everything's
yeah.
happening, just like
Yeah.
where's Brian?
Right. This is the episode where she moves in with them, right? Or wants to move in with them. So, oh yeah, no, she says, "Mama, Mama, where is Brian?" Right. Yeah, and that I remember was super surprising to me when we watched it because I had absolutely, completely, and utterly forgotten about that. I just forgot that it existed, and when I saw it, I was like, and I don't even remember shooting the actual scene. I remember that I was on set and I also had to do something for an episode, that episode, I don't remember, but I remember I was shadowing and then at some point I was like, oh, and I have to go, but I don't remember what it was. And it was that. But that also, I don't remember it. Like, I don't, I, like, I was watching that and I was like, Wow. So that probably tells you that my mind was like almost 100% in like the shadowing of a director. Like that I wasn't really like in acting mode. I wasn't, like I didn't care. I probably was just like, all right, let's get this done. I want to go back and find out what Lee is doing right now.
Mm. Which,
Um,
which
yeah.
I mean, from everything you've said, it was a way for you to get to the creating part, so it makes sense.
Yes, exactly. Right. Um, this was cool because this episode they shot parts of it on a different part of the lot that I'd never been to before. That was really, really interesting. It's this like European set that I just didn't even know was there. Um, and uh, and I just thought it was really fun, really cool. But like, there were obviously aspects of it that were not authentically European, like things like the curbs were too high. Yeah,
Hmm.
but it was but it was cool. I have the sides for that episode.
Remind me again, what are sides? Those are the
Sides,
little notes you
yeah,
learn for the day, right?
yeah. Sides are a little like photocopied, stapled in the upper left corner, copy of just the scenes that will be shot that day. All the scenes that will be shot that day. And the cover page of a pair of sides is a sheet that has like information like what scenes are being shot, where they're going to be shot, who are the actors that are on set that day. Um, it's just like the whole day in a nutshell, all on one page, all in all kinds of code that represents all of the different things that are happening that day. That's page one. Page two and on is just a tiny, shrunken version of the script pages that are going to be performed by the actors that day. So when you get to set and you go into your trailer, there's usually sitting there on the like little counter inside there or on the couch or something like that is your little packet is your little sides. That's the first thing that you get, and you start at that moment is when you kind of are like, well, no, that's not true. Some actors are probably a little bit more conscientious. They probably start actually reading the script the night before and working on it. Sean Gunn is like, he is a super preparer, so he absolutely like already was off book probably before he even got to set. Whereas most actors, they get off book there with those sides. Because, usually, I mean, unless there's a ton of stuff that you have to memorize, um, and you might need to start beforehand. But, if there's a ton of stuff that you have to memorize, especially if you're like a regular cast member, you're working so much that you really don't have time outside of being on set to to like dedicate to just learning those lines. So you do it while you're on set, and you usually are using your sides, or you get sides for the next day given sent to you and stuff. So, but in the case of Zach and Brian, our we just didn't have enough lines that it was that necessary that you be super prepared, that you be off book before you arrive on the set, because you will have like a good 5 hours there on set where you're not doing anything, where you're just sitting in your trailer or you're having a conversation with another actor. Like large portions of your day is just not actually doing anything. So those are when you would grab George Bell and like ask George Bell if he'll help you get off book and help. That's when you would grab other actors and you'd all just sort of get in a little circle and just go read through it, and then eventually try and like cover your close your eyes and see if you can do it without looking down at the page, and then eventually you just sort of get it in your bones, and then you go to set and you're good. And that's sort of the tool that you use as sides. I have the sides for that episode.
Nice.
I might have and Todd was in that episode, so he's on that page, on that front page, and I might have those sides signed.
So is that something that we might have as a as an option for a maybe auction happening sometime maybe in the near future?
Maybe.
Oh, pins and needles, pins and needles.
Um, Lee is a really, really good director. I'll also say that. You know that like that's probably why I was like so focused on and so excited that I got to shadow the episode. Just it was just really awesome to watch a really experienced, really skilled director do her thing. I remember the scene in the Yale Daily News um, because I remember watching that from one of the angles. Um, that was the episode where Bill is promoted, correct?
Yeah, so Rory is no longer the editor,
Yeah, yeah,
and he struggles with what comes next. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna give that one a 4 because I just remember it fondly as an episode that I was a part of in a different way than normal.
So I'm just gonna mention one more thing because it'll come back in other episodes. This is also the episode where we finally meet boyfriend, and Marty pretends not to know Rory.
Oh, right. Right. Oh, well, I liked that moment. I liked it for its weirdness. I liked it for its weirdness and its human weirdness. You know, people can be weird.
Mm,
People can be weird, and he's a weird guy.
yeah.
And that became very obvious this season. Um, and you know, nothing like heartbreak to make you even weirder.
Cool. All right. So the next one is introducing Lorelie Planetarium. Chris and Lorelie struggled with how to tell Rory that they eloped.
Oh,
Rory,
oh, right. And there's the eloping that happened
yes.
in the previous episode.
Well, I
Um,
figured you remembered that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I know now. Of course, I do remember it. I'm just saying, like, you know, I'm just being reminded of it. Also, really super interesting. And also, this episode and French Twist ends with, you know, we find that out because we actually don't find out there. Like, you know, the proposals in this restaurant, and you know, and there's lots of debate about it, and you know, what we're gonna do, and we don't really know what's going to happen. And then the episode ends with them arriving back, and she has the ring. We didn't even get to see the marriage. We didn't get to see the
Mm-hmm.
wedding. Like it all happened off screen,
Yeah.
and this is some of the stuff that personally I liked about this season. I like that kind of stuff. That's just, you know, the more it's just that's just interesting storytelling, and it worked for me.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So Lorelei Planetarium. Rory initially pretends to be happy, but Lorelei knows better and confronts her. Um, Logan is back in New York, so Rory goes to a party and meets an online magazine editor, for whom she writes a scathing piece on the whole group, on all of his guests. Sorry.
Right.
April has her first boy girl party to go to, but is too sick. And Luke calls Lorelai, who suggests she takes her to the hospital. When Lorelai checks in with him at the hospital, Luke sees the ring.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It's a good episode.
I agree.
You know, I mean, like the trend for me is going to be like wherever there's drama, I'm going to probably like it. Um, yeah, this is a 4. This is a 4 for me.
Okay.
It's strong, strong emotions, strong like you know that moment between Luke and Lorelai is awesome, and more of the Luke and April dynamic, which I really enjoy. Um, yeah, it's good. It's good. It's a really good episode.
Okay. Knit people knit. So it starts off with the Gilmores tell Lorelai and Chris that they want to throw them a wedding party. The town has a knit-a-thon to raise money. Meanwhile, Lorelai is on a mission to get Christopher better liked in the town and sets up mandates with Jackson. Um, Rory moves back in with Paris and Doyle, and Lucy has her 21st birthday party where Rory confronts Marty about his attitude and they make peace until he tells her that he thinks she's more beautiful than ever. And then Christopher ruins the knit-a-thon by paying for it all.
Oh, right. Oh, right. Yeah. I'd forgotten that little detail. Um,
Did I mention that Rory moves in with Paris and Doyle? Did I say that?
yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
yes. I remember that.
I
Yeah.
can't remember now.
Um, yes.
Oh, and Doula's born.
And Dula is born. Dula.
Doula is Liz and TJ's kid.
Oh, right, right, right. Oh,
So
right.
actually, sorry, I realized I forgot something. Adula's born. Anna reveals she's moving away and taking April. Luke decides to fight back.
Right.
My notes are a little messed up on this episode. Sorry.
Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Uh, that I like this episode as well, and I like that. I mean, was one of my favorite parts of the episode.
Yeah.
Um, this was did this is this the one that ends with Luke going to her house
Yes.
and like just being like, "This is what I'm gonna do. Like, you're not gonna do this. I have right that kind of right like something
Yeah.
of that."
Absolutely. Yeah. Like he's
Yeah,
like,
that was a
I'm
that
her
was
father. Why do I have to say this? Yeah.
yeah. I love that. I love that, and I loved it. Not just it was an enjoyable piece of narrative to experience, but it also just like it just led to some really great discussions afterwards. Um, and it was also around the time where I started to because I kind of was for a while like you know hey, I kind of like this Nardini character. I think that she's kind of cool, and there's something interesting about her similarity to Lorelai. And I really, really dug that, like, like that scene between Lorelai and Anna when she goes to Anna's store and Anna sort of just shuts her down. You
Yeah.
know, I really liked that, and I actually was sort of on Anna's side in that discussion. I sort of felt like, yeah, I mean, she is protecting her daughter, and she should. Um, and this was around the point where I started to get why everybody doesn't like Anna. Like why there was this like big animosity towards her that I couldn't really. I was like, I don't get it. I think she's nice, and cool and interesting, and could be a good catch for Luke if he wanted to sort of go in that direction. I can hear a collective the collective beanbags going like like a huge gag.
I
Um,
hear it too.
yeah, but I but this is where it starts to shift. I had done really well. I thought really done like nicely. The writing was like this sort of shift here is I think really well done, and of course gets even better in the next episodes.
Perfect.
So this I'm gonna give this one not quite a four, maybe like a somewhere between a three and a four.
Okay. All right. Mary Fisticuffs.
Oh,
Um.
this is the episode where I was spoiled going into the episode because I had seen a commercial way back in the day, a commercial of Luke and Christopher fighting in front of the gazebo,
Yep.
and,
So
and I
that's
and I
our
remember
very
for
end.
yeah, I remember for seasons we're watching the show, and I'm like, I know
When's
he's
that fight coming?
yeah, like I know that there's something happening. So I'm because we were talking about like, what's Lorelai's like who's going to be who's going to be the obstacle? What, like, you know, this can't be that easy. Like, you know, it's season 4 and now these two are getting together. We've got more seasons to come. We need an obstacle. And I was like, it's Christopher, you know. And part of that was, I remember a later season, I was on set and there's like Lorelai and Christopher are together. But then it was also like, I also remember that commercial where we just see them like walking towards one another, the camera pushing in on one, then it cuts to the other pushing in, and then just like them rolling around fighting.
Yeah.
What else
Ah,
though in this episode? Because other
okay.
than that, I'm drawing a little bit of a blank.
So I was like, did we
If you
already
joggle
do?
my memory, maybe I'll be like, oh yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
didn't
I
do.
got
All right. So Luke explores issues with custody and visits a lawyer who tells him that most times the courts favor the mother.
it. Mm-hmm.
Um, Chris and Lorelai look at options for their future while planning their party with Emily, but Lorelai does not want to confirm having more kids with Chris, which sends him for a mind twist, resulting in the quiet wrestling fight in the square with Luke. Logan meets Lucy and Marty and eventually tells Lucy the truth about their past. Emily gives Lorelai marriage advice that marriage is serious business and it must be taken seriously.
This was the episode where I was talking because I never talk in episodes. So
No,
this
no,
was the one episode where I was talking. No.
yeah,
This was the episode where I was actually talking during that scene between Lucy, Marty,
yes,
Rory, and Logan, and I missed something really important
yes,
about Marty's character. That then afterwards, I was kind of a little like I knew the characters was weird, but I was kind of confused by folks being like, "What a creeper! He's a total stalker," you know, and like all these memes about him. I'm like, "What? The guy's just." I mean, he was lovesick and he was a little weird, and he said something, you know, at the party, like probably had been drinking, and he just was in the moment, just said something dumb, you know. But what I missed was the important history of his and Lucy's relationship,
yeah,
which is mentioned here, which was that he was like showing up, constantly showing up to her like performances, just or watching from like you know the shadows.
yeah.
And
He
here's the
came to
thing:
every performance, sat in the front row, and she eventually
had to
went
just
up
be
to
kind
him.
of like, "What are you doing?" Yeah, but then she's also like, "What are you doing? Do you want to date?" Which is I guess a little also a little funny. But I don't know. I actually don't know if that's what she said because I don't remember the scene. I have to watch that, or I don't. I didn't see that moment, so I don't know exactly how it went down. But they did end up dating. So, um, but here's my thing about that though. Um, Obviously, I'm going to need to watch the scene again, which I will when we do a rewatch. Uh, this Marty that is sort of being given to us in season 7 doesn't really totally align with the Marty that I got to know in previous seasons. And I'm not sure how I reconcile that. Do I just sort of say, well, people change, or people, you know, or we're seeing the real part of Marty, whereas in those earlier seasons we were seeing a, you know, sort of restrained Marty who was new at Yale. And now that, like, you know, he's sort of grown a little bit, this is who he's grown into.
I
Um,
think it would be a mix of both. I think
Maybe
I
it
would
felt a little bit of
definitely.
a betrayal of the character because I just didn't really see him like that. I saw him as like a shy, nice guy, you know.
Well, so I was gonna say, I think his experiences with like I hate to blame it on Rory, but like his experiences with Rory may have made him more gun shy about approaching someone else.
Mhm.
So he didn't know how to express it any better and turned a little bit stalkery.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah, I don't know if that
he
sounds
tried to be as
that
direct as
sounds
he.
like that sounds like intellectually to make sense. It doesn't strike me as realistic though. Like I'm kind of like, oh, okay, I can see how that would make sense. Like if you break it down like that, but I don't know if I'm completely buying it like as a character change. Like I just don't know if I don't
Yeah,
know if
that's
that's really
that's
what
fair.
people if that's what people do. Like that he becomes like a stalker because he tried the normal way. I don't know, but. regardless, it was a character that I quite liked. I really liked the Marty character a lot in earlier seasons. I thought that he was, shy, but also funny at times. Like they had like these really great scenes together. Chatting about like he seemed to be really into like cool music, and there were aspects to the character, and I said this when we were talking through the episode that made me feel like their plan for that character was not to eventually make him weird stalker guy. That when he was first hired for the role, that there very well may have been an intention to sort of explore what could potentially become a new love triangle between Logan, him, and Rory. But that was so clearly abandoned because they really focused heavily that season, the same season he was introduced. They really focused heavily on the Dean, Lindsay, Rory love triangle. And I don't know. In my mind, I think like I mean, obviously you can grow. I mean, the characters are not real, so you can grow them however you'd like. If you just give them certain given circumstances that they've met, throughout the the time that we either see or don't see them. And here are the given circumstances that they gave a certain set of given circumstances between the last time that we saw him and now that have formed him into this character. And I don't know how I feel about it. Maybe just because I liked the character early on. But I also do sort of feel like that isn't necessarily where they imagined him, growing at the beginning. It may, though, have been where they imagined him going, like after he sort of leaves the narrative for a bit. It's very possible that Amy talked before she left the show about him potentially being a guy that she could see being kind of like getting a little creepy, and that might have been what inspired the writers in season 7 to write what they did. Because remember, we've talked about how the writers in season 7 were mostly the writers of season 6, so they a lot of what they were playing with in season 7 was likely talked about in some way during writer sessions in season 6. So Amy probably didn't like, she wasn't completely blinded by I would have to imagine, by the things that they did.
I agree. Yeah.
Although
So
the
how would you?
pregnancy, she definitely didn't want that pregnancy, and that we were given at the very beginning of season 7. So that was something that they decided on during the summer without any real input from, or not inspired by any input that Amy would have given the previous season. So I don't know. I like to give them the benefit. I like to give the season 7 writers the benefit of the doubt that they were doing their best to keep the full vision, and that they weren't like just trying to derail um, Amy's ideas. I think that they respected Amy's full vision and wanted it to be there, and I think that they, in a lot of cases, um, they did. I think they did right by Amy. The Marty character, I don't know. I mean, for me, I didn't really love where that character landed. And in the same way that people criticize, like I don't love where Rory landed. Like there's plenty of folks that really don't like that. I mean, I know Marty is obviously not like not a main character, so it is not like, it doesn't really hurt the show for me in any way. But that's sort of how I feel about Marty, right? Like I'm like, I kind of really like that guy, and felt like I got him, and I feel like they wrote that character wrong, in later seasons, probably just because of my distaste for the character in later seasons, as opposed to my like of the character in earlier seasons.
Yeah.
And so that isn't that different than people kind of feel like, oh gosh, that's not my Rory.
Yeah. So how would you rate this one? Would you say?
I'm going to give this one, somewhere between a 3 and a 4.
Okay.
Again, I liked it. I liked it. It was more than okay, but I wouldn't say that I wouldn't give it a 4. We haven't gotten a 5 yet. Have you noticed?
No, we haven't. No, but
Another
you
5. Maybe that's
you're a big
because the
fan of
season doesn't have a 5.
this season.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're saying you're a big fan of this season. Let's see if we actually ever make it into a five. We have a good number of fours. I
But we have
mean,
a good number of fours, and that could be that could be fine. I do
yeah,
know that there are two episodes coming, or at least two moments coming, that there's one episode that I could probably tell you now, like before we
I'm
get to
pretty
it,
sure
that
I
it's a
know which
five.
one it is
Okay.
because I was redoing the recordings or like working through the recordings, and you were like, "This may be one of the best scenes in television ever," so,
Oh, okay. I wonder what it is.
or best
Um,
scenes in the show ever. So we'll see
yeah.
if I get there. Um, the next one will be Secret Santa stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Rory comes back from her trip with London, and the family celebrates Christmas late. Luke asks Lorelai to write him a character reference for custody for April, who tries to sneak away to visit Luke, and Luke implores her to do things on the up and up. Lorelai struggles with the letter, but after a run in and a walk down memory lane, she's able to type it out in one go. Lane tries to adapt to living with Mrs. Kim, but balks after her drums have been packed away. She calls for a band rehearsal, but it gets sidetracked with baby products and Gil's sons visiting. Zach talks to her about how not everything has to stop being rock and roll just because the babies are coming.
Yeah. Good episode. Good solid episode. I'm gonna give it a four. That
Okay.
scene in the square, I really loved it. You know, it was a moment where I sort of felt like it was a good counter. It was a really good counter argument to all of the negativity about Lane. Lane being sort of handed this like awful obstacle by writers. I really, you know, it's not to make this all about me, but I really also like Brian in this episode. You know, like the looking at the belly, like just like all of like the breast pump. Uh, I thought that that was all really fun. The letter was also that. I mean, we know that that's going to become one of the most awesome things coming up.
Yeah.
uh, and it was good. It was good. It was a really good episode. I'm gonna put this one also like either a four or close to it.
Well, you said it was a four at the beginning, so
Oh, did I say it was
I'm
four?
sticking.
Yeah, then a
Yeah.
four. Then let's give it a four. Let's give it
Perfect.
a four.
Which brings us to whom it may concern. But I'm not starting
Ooh.
with the good stuff. Wait.
Okay.
Suki
Uh-huh.
asks Lorelai to stay with the kids for a ski getaway, which Jackson ruins, and it's revealed that he never got his vasectomy, and Suki is pregnant again,
Right.
which she is livid about.
Yes. Yeah.
Meanwhile, Luke attends his court date, and Lorelai's letter is finally read, which is also discovered by Chris as he putters around the house.
Yep.
He ends up leaving.
Yeah.
Paris reveals her Operation Finish Line with all the boards all over the apartment. Meanwhile, Paris brokers a peace between Rory and Lucy, who reveals that she broke up with Marty, and we close the episode with Richard collapsing in class.
I mean, this is one of the best episodes of the entire series. It's
I
just,
knew it.
I mean, it's just so, it just has everything. It's so good.
Yeah,
The, I mean, it's a five. I mean, it's just like a solid one, two, three, four, five. Stump, bong, 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 bong,
yeah.
bong. That scene, the letter scene, is just magnificent. You know, it's just
That's the one, by the way. That's the scene that you said maybe
oh,
you either said it was the best in the show or the best on television in like
it
two different
was
episodes.
just, it's just like just narrative, just it's storytelling at its best. It's just a amazing moment. It's so full of tension. You're just, oh my goodness, what's going to happen next? I mean, then couple that with Richard collapsing. It just, there's just so much in this episode. Um,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, it's really great.
Cool. All right. The next one is it's funny because it's the really, really great one, and we're done. It's really great.
Yeah. Oh, also, and then let's, we'll talk just briefly about the whole um, Jackson thing. So, uh, that that is like I get how it's a huge gross turnoff, you know, that like, and we talked about how that was so clearly written for comedy, like it was written to be funny,
Mhm.
and it's not funny anymore for sure. It probably never was really that funny, but the thing that I appreciate about that, and maybe this is just simply a Remarcus thing, but that also just inspired so much discussion about that, about whether or not that is, what he did was essentially like sexual assault. I mean, it was like it was. I just remember it from our watches as just a really a one of my favorite episodes that we watched, because it was just so full of perspectives and interesting discussions and whatnot. And while I think that ultimately that stuff wasn't really even really that funny, like it wasn't that well written, I appreciate what it gave us, just as a community. It gave us a really interesting point for discussion, interesting thought. I don't know if I would have gone as deep into all of that without the community to help guide me. And so I'm just like really appreciative of that. But what makes that episode great for me is just all of that stuff that happens towards the end.
Cool. All right. The next one is I. Sorry. Okay. I'd rather be in Philadelphia. The Gilmore Girls are all at the hospital trying to get updates on Richard, while Christopher is still a no-show. Logan and Luke both are there and help to fill in the gaps as best as they can. Zach fills in at the diner for Lane, and then we just get that Richard is going to need to recover because it was a serious heart attack.
Yeah, this was an interesting episode. I'm not going to give it a 4, but it's somewhere close. Um, it, it was really interesting. This is a very interesting contrast to the episode, the last time that Richard had a heart attack and we all spent time in the hospital. Um, and mostly because of Emily, right? Like Emily's like her
Mhm.
tone is very different in this one, right? She's like all about like preparations and all this kind of stuff. And we talked about how that first heart attack really shook her, and so it makes sense that she would have been much more focused on the things that need to happen, things that need to go. And I thought that was really, really interesting. um Christopher eventually does. Oh, he does show up, right?
He does show up, but
He
Luke
should.
is there and he
Yeah,
runs back out.
it's a really that. Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure that it doesn't happen in the next episode, but it doesn't. This episode is like, well, the only one that's like really like the main hospital thing. But there's that great scene with Lorelie, outside calling him like, I don't know where you are, but you are my husband, and just like that just really like gut wrenching moment. And then he shows up at the end, and he doesn't even like say anything about Richard. His only focus is on Luke.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give this a 4. I'm gonna give it a 4. I'm going up to a 4 because all that stuff's
Wow.
interesting. All that stuff's really cool. It's really cool character stuff. I mean, you know, just just to be clear, I'm not giving these are not scores based on like how I liked characters behaving within the scene. These are scores based on what I think of the narrative juice. And this episode had some really great tense moments and a lot of really exciting stuff. And that moment there with with uh with Luke and Christopher was just cool. I mean, it was charged with like, you know, these two fought in the town square. Uh, Christopher was punched in the face out of nowhere by him, by Luke. You know, it just had all of that in there. You know, and so much so he doesn't even think to do the most obvious thing, which is how's Richard doing.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's sorry, my dinner came. Um,
Bon appetit.
Thank you, Mediterranean. We ordered
Ooh.
DoorDash. Um, I just think it just made for like for an engaging watch. So this one gets a 4.
Cool. All right. We've got Farewell, My Pet. So Richard's recovering at the hospital while Rory gets back to Yale. Meanwhile, in Stars Hollow, Chin Chin has passed away, and Michelle appreciates a memorial service that was volunteered to by Lorelie and Suki, but who in the end do not know how to carry it off. Lorelai confronts Chris about his disappearance. Not much is resolved at first, aside from admitting that it was too much of a rebound, but eventually they recognize that they have to walk away. She laments that she wished that he was the man that she wanted to want, but it ends there.
I don't. I would. I would say that most of the episode, I don't really have much of it. Like I don't remember much of it, and in general, like I kind of remember the Chin Chin stuff and not really being all that engaged.
Mm,
So for that reason, it kind of gets a 2 for me, right? Like for
yeah.
that. But then, or a 1 or a 2. But the end with Christopher, that final scene where it's just sort of realization that like all those years, like everything that has been built up, the tension of whether or not they can work is finally resolved here.
Mm.
Is what was really powerful, and I remember to be really emotional, and Lorelai crying, and him just sort of accepting it, finally accepting it, was really powerful, and so for that reason, it gets bumped up. Like if the whole episode was like that, it would be like certainly a 4, 4 or higher. But most of the episode was a little was a little flat for me. So I don't know, 3, maybe a little bit higher than a 3.
We'll go with a 3.
Yeah,
No one sues us. No one's going to sue us if they don't like our
no,
our scores.
no.
No. All right.
This is
I am.
enjoyable. I like the pace that we're going with this. I have to be honest. That like it allows me to really experience the season again. The last ones that we did, we were going so fast, and that I didn't really get to experience them again.
Well, I mean, after the great rewatch, we can do this and then we can plan an even slower pace if you want.
Sure, yeah.
And actually, it'd be interesting to see after the great rewatch, now that you know the whole arc of the story, if you would change your opinion on some of the episodes.
Yeah, totally. And some of the characters, right? Because, like I said, I by the end of the series, I sort of landed on, oh, I really love Lorelai and get why she's the character to really be invested in, and why she's such a favorite character. And early
Oh,
in this, and early in the series, I didn't feel that way about her. And early in the series, I was kind of annoyed by the selfishness, and just I really couldn't get behind. I really couldn't get behind her decisions, even though I kind of recognized like, she's done amazing work here raising this daughter all by herself. Just there's something about her personality that just didn't really click with mine. And once I started to really see her vulnerability in a way that we don't really feel it that much in the earlier seasons with Max and Digger and whatnot. But once we really start to see the vulnerability, that was when I really fell in love with the character. So I'm curious, like, how will I feel about the character now returning to her before all of that, but knowing all that's to come. That's the part that's really like kind of getting me excited about the idea of watching it again. And
Hmm.
I'd like to track characters a little bit more. I wasn't really able to track characters because I didn't know what I was tracking, you know.
Well, you never knew how long they would stay or come
Yeah,
and go. Yeah, makes sense.
exactly.
All right, so I am Kayak. Hear me roar. Lorelai attempts a road trip to tell Rory about the breakup, but the car runs out of gas, so they don't get far. Emily turns the house alcohol free while Richard recovers, and she butts heads with the nurse. Richard, however, prefers rewatching old golf matches to having company or to responding to his office requests, which Emily tries to fulfill in his behalf, but only succeeds after Lorelai comes over to help her. Rory plans a true birthday celebration for Logan, who gets bad news about his latest acquisitions, and is thrown off when. Sorry. Lorelai. Ugh. Rory plans a true birthday celebration for Logan. Mitchum gives her credit for the new Logan, who then ends up getting bad news about his latest acquisition. Liz and TJ come to stay with Luke because they have moths.
I don't remember that.
You don't
I don't
remember
know.
what part?
The moths. I don't remember that.
Oh, this is how Liz and so they come and stay with all of their stuff, and then they have a whole discussion about how Lorelai and Luke weren't at the same time continuum,
Mm.
and
I do remember that. I do remember that. Mm.
yeah. So
I guess
that's
I
kind
might
of
not
I
have been
think they
paying
set up
attention
that
to why
pretense
they were
for that
even there.
conversation.
I
Yeah.
think I wasn't paying attention to why they were there.
Okay.
That little detail about the moths. I lost that part. Uh, all of that stuff. Well, I will say that of course, that like I like when I get my predictions. When I'm successful with my predictions, and of course, I was predicting for many episodes that there was going to be a huge reversal of fortune for Logan in regards to this startup company that he was doing. I didn't know exactly what it was going to be, but it was certainly satisfying when he gets that call from his coworker. I'm like, oh yeah, there it is.
And the irony is that it comes right after Mitchum was praising him and was
Yeah.
praising Rory.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, that's how really great reversals work. In fiction, um, they usually come right after a big high. Uh, so I don't know if it's enough to give it a 4 though. I'm gonna still give it a 3.
okay. Alrighty. Anything more you'd like to say on it?
No,
No, you're good.
I'm good.
Okay. Will you be
I'm
my
very
Lorelai?
eager though that we're getting into what episode are we going on to now?
We're 16.
Hmm.
It's already in the
Yeah,
second half.
this last act is it I remember there are several things in it that I really really enjoy, and mostly they are Logan related things.
Hmm, okay, I'm curious. All right. Lorelai and Rory plan Lane's baby shower, who ends up getting put on bed rest, which means that she has to stay in the bed for her shower. She has a Lane ends up having a big lament over the loss of focus on herself because she wants to be like her mother, who always put her first. Meanwhile, Lorelai has to broker peace between Mrs. Kim and Lane about the baby shower because Mrs. Kim wants to boycott since Lane will not raise the kids her way. Rory has an interview with the New York Times for the Rest and Fellowship and ends up learning the truth about Logan's company when he plans a trip to Las Vegas to blow some steam. TJ and Liz try to sell Luke's boat. He decides to sell it to Kirk and buy a newer one so that he could take April on a summer trip. And this is the trip. This is the episode where we have Lee Getty stopping by.
Getty Lee, yeah.
Getty Lee, sorry.
um yeah, this is a good episode. I like this one. Obviously I have memories from this episode. specifically that those were really awesome memories of meeting Betty Lee. But um, in terms of a, just in terms of just the narrative, I'd probably say that a lot of it has gotten a little hazy for me. Mm, I don't know if I'd give it a two though, because there's still a lot in there that I still really liked and felt. So I think a three for this one.
Alrighty. 17. Gilmore Girls only. Road trip to Mia's wedding. Mia and Emily, your favorite character comes back. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
this has to be high up on the list.
No,
Um,
this one's really low on the list, and not necessarily because of Mia. Obviously, like I've talked about my feelings about the Mia character. I actually thought that this second version of Mia was more palatable, I guess you would say, than the first. The first Mia just felt like styrofoam. I just didn't really, but I joke about her being evil and stuff. It's just mostly I the character just didn't really feel multi-dimensional is really the mostly, whereas this one kind of seemed interesting a
mm,
bit. But for the most part, the thing about this episode that I didn't like, I just found it a little boring. um the the road trip, and it was cool that the interesting moment was this moment when Logan shows up.
yep.
That part was interesting. That's part of several of the Logan things that got me really, really, really heavily invested in his story. Um, just how he's losing his confidence, he's losing his footing. He's getting it wrong. He's not quite the master and commander that he kind of poses himself to be when we first meet him. And then I really enjoy seeing that kind of character arc.
Yeah. So this is the episode where he tells that he's going to leave the family business and start out on his own.
Yeah.
Not going to work for his father anymore. And then this is also the episode where Zach and Lane ask Luke to be the godfather of their kids, and Lane goes into labor. So
Yeah.
are we sticking with a 2 or 3?
Oh, it's not a two. It's not a two. I mean,
Not 2.
it's at the least a three. It could be a bit higher because of some of that stuff with Logan, and of course I have such really high, really fond memories of shooting it, um and and all that stuff. Like I really loved that moment where Lane asks Rory to be her Lorelai.
Oh no, you're confusing 2 episodes. We're in a different episode now.
Oh, you moved on to the next episode?
Yeah. So the next episode is
Okay.
the road
I
trip
was
to
still
Mia's
talking
wedding.
about I was still talking about that other episode.
Okay.
My
Sorry.
heart was still with Geddy Lee.
Okay. No, we're on Gilmore Girls only. We're on the road trip to
Oh
Mia's
right, we're
wedding.
the road trip. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Um.
Sorry. I was still No, I mean now I remember we were talking about Mia and we were talking about the road, and I didn't really like it. That's right. Yeah, that episode's still low. That episode's probably about a two.
Okay. Cool.
But what
So
did I give the Geddy Lee episode?
3.
I gave it a three. I think we can bump that up. I think
Okay.
we can bump that up because I do like that moment with Rory, with Lane and Rory, and I really liked that moment when Luke meets Lorelai at the door of the party, and
Yeah.
sh- and he says something. He tells her about that he sold the boat, right?
Yes. And
And
then he wants.
she's sort of surprised by it, and then he's like, "People change,"
Mm-hmm.
and I just that was a really nice little exchange there. That we can start to feel like that there's a turn happening with the Lorelai and Luke storyline, which is exciting. And
If
that
I'm not mistaken, this may have been where you set that bet that I lost.
Mhm.
That the end of the season
Correct,
end with the two of
correct.
them.
I said these two. These two are gonna smooch.
Yes.
We got a smoocheroo coming. I can feel it. Um, yes, that's right. Um, yeah, give this a solid 4. What was I thinking?
Okay. What were you thinking, John? It's you were distracted by your dinner.
Yes.
All right, we're gonna move on to Hay Bale Maze.
Mm. I love this episode. I love this episode.
Cool.
I love this episode. I think I'm gonna give it a 5, just right out of the gate before you tell me. Give I found that hay bale maze set to be just gorgeous and inspiring. I thought it was a great example of the town becoming a character, right? Like where you jumped around to all these different scenes of people, like kind of interacting with one another, but with the town as reference, like Zach having to make deliveries through the maze, and just I thought it was just it was just the episode was just full of delight and surprise. This is another great episode for Logan. He's coming to her town for the first, or not coming to her town for the first time, but it's really his first time experiencing the town, right? Like, or
Yeah.
is it the first time he's actually visited the town? I remember it was just very much like, wow, he never really came here. She would always go to his world, and finally he's coming to her world, and of course he's been knocked down, really like really knocked off of his footing. He has that conversation with Lorelie in the kitchen, which was really awesome. Um, and then just the meeting between Luke and Lorelai in the maze is just awesome. This is like one of my favorite moments in the whole season. Um, and I'll never forget like the end where he points to her. He points to her the direction to get out of the maze, and we end with pulling back and see that she doesn't actually. She goes kind of back into the maze.
Wow, you really remember this episode. You
Give it a
basically
give
touched on everything I was
give
gonna say.
that give that episode a hard 5.
Oh, it's a hard 5. You got it. But poke through the paper.
No.
All right, I don't have really anything to add. Aside from Rory does another interview, actually gets the job, but decides to wait for the New York Times fellowship, which both Lorelai and Logan disagree about. Like Logan wants her to wait, Lorelai wants her to take it. But otherwise, you got it all.
Yeah, yeah, it's cool. And there's that moment where they're going into the maze, where they're they're waiting in line to get into the maze. Hmm.
Yeah.
Also, and that's where they talk about it, where he's like, what do you want to do, Um, and she wants to take she wants to um, sort of she wants the more adventurous route, the fellowship. Um, and then I mean, Taylor at the entrance of the maze, like just completely like snot dripping out of his like eyes watering, but gotta commit, it's the hay bale maze, like gotta do it, buddy. Just
Mhm.
I mean, I think that it's like some of the best, really like totally on point Gilmore Girls world storytelling that the season 7 writers did without having their leader from previous
Cool.
seasons.
Well, I'm glad we got a couple more 5s there. um, Next one, just like riding a bike. Anything come to mind when I said that?
Mm-mm.
All
This
right.
is no, 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 no,
No, no, no, no.
no, no, no.
Lorelai's Jeep breaks down and she rides her bike around town while deciding what to do. Luke helps her to car shop, and in the end, they decide that she will be able to replace the engine and keep her old car.
Right. Yeah, this is also where we start to get the old Luke and Lorelai back, because up until now they've been so nervous around one another, that you know we're starting to feel like, well, even if they did come back together, like, would it even be the same anymore? Like, have they broken whatever it was that they had? And this is the episode where you're kind of like, oh no, those two are basically kind of the same. She's like kind of leading around. He's annoyed with like all of her choices. And in the end, he's like, all right, this is how it's going to work.
Yep.
We're going to fix your Jeep. We're going to put it, I don't know. It was fun. I'll give this one a 4.
Okay, but I'm not done yet.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Uh-oh.
Jackson stays with Lorelie because the kids have chicken pox and ends up destroying her dollhouse.
Right.
Rory does not get the NY the New York Times fellowship, while Paris gets into all of her programs and freaks out about her decision. So she pre-breaks up with Doyle, who
Yeah.
refuses to be broken up with.
Okay. So the stuff with Jackson and the dollhouse, that I remember being kind of feeling like it was a bit of forced narrative.
Yeah.
That it sort of felt like it was created to get us to the doorstep scene between Suki and Lorelai. So that we could have that. I don't know. There's something about it that felt like it just felt a little clumsy. So that actually sort of deducts some points from it.
Oh,
However, what's that?
I said, "Aw."
Aw. Um, however, sorry.
I'm waiting on that.
That
However,
scene, that scene at the end with with Paris getting those acceptance letters is hilarious.
I agree.
Is just peak comedy for the series. I mean, just absolutely awesome. And even though you totally see it coming that she's not going to get the fellowship after what we've just seen there with Paris, it is really, really great, like coming full circle when you take that scene and you compare it to Rory getting a mailbox full of acceptance letters and Paris, like, in tears on the stairs with Rory talking about how she's, you know, with Jamie and having sex with Jamie and all of that stuff. It's just really cool. They like that they that they brought that back in a really interesting way. So that actually brings it back up. So it's back. It's still at a 4. It went down for a second to like around a 3 or 3.2, and then it went back up to a 4.
Hey, I'm glad we got where it ended.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Lorelei, Lorelei. One word. Karaoke.
Oh. Mm.
Rory
Well,
ponders her future. Paris prepares for Harvard Medical School. And Lorelei questions what's happening with Luke and her. Zach and Lane get used to being parents, and Zach gets a gig as a vapor rep guitarist. April gets into a science camp that will prevent her from taking the boat trip, and Logan asks permission to propose to Rory. Plus the karaoke. Like, I'm not gonna go into the karaoke. You know what I'm talking.
yeah. I mean, I'm a sucker for moments like that in storytelling. I just like music is so just used well can just be they can just be like these incredible memorable moments in a film or TV show, and this is definitely one of those. Not only like because Lauren's a singer, which I actually didn't know until we watched the show, and everyone said that she's a musical theater person. Um, but what was really cool is that she's singing pretty well, but she's also sort of singing karaoke ish as well. Like there's a little bit of she does a really good job of like balancing between like sounding like she's just a normal person singing karaoke and singing well enough that it's really beautiful, and and of course, like that's one of the greatest songs ever. And so just the whole thing together was just like really touching and exciting, because you can kind of feel that we can feel that we're gonna be getting that smooch that we know is going to win us some kernels. um
You got
uh
paid already. You don't need to
yeah.
milk it anymore.
No. um and and also another really exciting moment with Logan. I could already feel that I could already feel where that was going, with Logan and Rory and marriage.
Yeah.
uh and so it's a moment that drew me in. um I'm going to give this one a 4. I'm not going to give it a 5, because I wouldn't say that it goes all the way to the peak, but it's at least a 4, maybe a 4.5.
Okay.
You're like, why that
No,
karaoke? Don't you remember that moment when the
no,
karaoke wasn't it?
it's
Yeah.
all you. I am not putting any of my judgment in. It's all you. If I was, then we'd go back to some of those twos. Then we'd have another conversation. Just saying.
Okay.
21. On to the breach. It's graduation day. We have the apartment is all packed up, and Emily and Richard throw Rory a graduation party where they sing her a special song. At the same party, Christopher shows up and Logan proposes. Rory
Yes. Oh God.
eventually says, "Not now,"
Yeah.
but
Yeah. I,
Logan
I mean,
walks
I
away.
yeah. I remember this episode like it was yesterday.
Uh,
Um.
One thing more is this is where we get that incredible performance of Kirk in a box.
Mhm.
Lorelai finally goes into the diner amongst the discussion of giving signs to one another after the song.
This is episode 21. This is not the finale.
No, this is episode
This
21.
is right before. This is also when Luke and Lorelai have that awesome speech at the garbage can, looking up at Kirk in the box, and
Yeah,
they're talking about each other, but not talking about each other.
yeah,
Um,
because of the proposal. They're
yeah, yeah,
discussing
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah,
Logan
yeah,
proposal.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, uh, this is a 5, I think.
Yay!
This is a 5, I think. I mean, that proposal scene is so cringy good. It's just so cringy good. And the song, the song that Richard and Emily do is fun. I mean, it's a good episode. It's just like, and uh, it's not the definitive end of Logan and Rory. That's still to come,
Mm, yeah,
right? Yeah,
yeah.
that's still
Well,
to
I
come.
mean,
There, well,
for
but
the
it's
original run,
oh
for
oh
the original
oh right.
run, yeah, this is the
Okay,
definitive.
yeah. This does end with him meeting her again the next day after the graduation itself.
Yeah,
They like kind of pulling to the side. They're standing by that tree, and and basically it's just like, okay, well then we're done, like kind of thing.
that's what Logan says. Yeah.
That's what Logan says. She's like, well, what do we have to be done? I mean, like, I just don't want to marry you, and it's like, yeah, but I sort of agree. I think Rachel mentioned this when we were during the watch, during the post show afterwards, um, that like it's kind of hard to come back from a no propose, like to be turned down, like that. It's I think that his perspective is, our relationship is now kind of damaged in a way that we won't really be able to recover from, at least not now. And I sort of agree with that. Uh, and just in general, the episode is just full of tension, really exciting. it was this last act of the season that really had me like going like I like season 7 a lot. It's probably one of my favorite seasons. And this is one of the best.
Yeah, I agree.
Also just like if we want to talk about, juxtaposing, two graduation scenes, you know, the difference between her college graduation versus her high school graduation, just like that moment where she like, gets up on stage and she looks out towards her mom, and like there's just this look of like what is out there in this world. I'm kind of afraid, like there was just this like lost look. Whereas you compare that to like the goofy like tongue sticking out moment that she has when she's walking off the stage for high school, and it's really cool. It's just like where she is at two different points in her life. She's now an adult. She's about to like venture off into the wild unknown, and she's scared. Whereas the transition from high school into college is like comes with all of this excitement and really is still ultimately a kid. Um, anyway, great episode. That's all I'll
Cool.
say.
All right, that brings us to the finale. Bon Voyage. Rory
Hmm.
gets to meet Christiana Amanpour
Yeah,
and lands a job Rama's budgeting. The town wants to have a party to recreate her graduation that they missed, but it turns out that it will be raining, so that Luke stays up all night creating a tent. Meanwhile, Lane is supposed to have a girls' night with Rory facing the town square, and balks at the suggestion that she cuts it short. In the end, the episode ends with Luke coffee at Luke's, and this is the episode where I got to lose my bet because there was that final kiss.
yeah. Mm, I I have to say, I really like this episode, and I thought that it was a good end to the series as it was personally. But some of it has, I have to admit, has faded a little for me. The
Mhm.
only part that really just sticks out is just all of that stuff between Luke and Lorelie, the party, um, you know, her walking over, them kissing, like all that stuff was like, just like super triumphant and glorious, awesome. So for that reason, I would like give it really high mark. But there are also parts of it that just are a little hazy for me. Like the penultimate episode for me in this season was like the high point of the series, or of the season. That was the last episode. Um, Whereas the finale like had a really wonderful moment like that we've been waiting for like for the entire season, the Luke and Lorelai kiss. But in other spots, it's just a little hazy for me. So I would probably give this one like 3.54 maybe.
So I was gonna say, I feel like the 21 is supposed to wrap up the Rory storyline,
Yeah.
like graduation, whatever. Whereas the Bon Voyage, I felt like was an homage to the town, an
Right.
homage to saying goodbye to the whole story, not just the Gilmore Girl of Rory and Lorelai, because
Hmm.
that's where the whole town gets involved, including Brian. Brian is at the party, you know.
Yes, correct.
Like it's so I felt like that was more of the goodbye to the town versus the goodbye to the main characters.
Hmm.
So I think that may be
I
why
just
it's different. Like
I
you're
liked
you're
it.
you're drawn to the drama because it's the drama of the main schedule, the main character,
Hmm.
whereas the second one is that it's the whole town type of involvement.
I liked the episode. It's just some areas of it just have faded a little bit for me, and so for that reason, I can't, in good faith, give it a 4.
Okay.
But I don't feel totally comfortable giving it a 3 because I think it was a good episode. But I just loved the one before even much more.
All right.
All
So
right. How'd we do? How'd we fare? How is season 7? Is season 7 a good season?
season 7 is a fairly even season.
Hmm.
There, it is slightly tipped towards the 4 and the 5s.
Mm-hmm.
But let me just count here: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So you have 9 episodes that are squarely 3 or below, and
Mm-hmm.
11 episodes that are 3, 4.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we count the
Okay.
2 that are 3, 4,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you're at 11 episodes. So half of it is a little below,
Got it.
and then you've got 10 that are 5 or 4s.
Wow. Okay. How does that compare to season 6?
Ooh, you're gonna make me do homework? Hang on. Gotta go pull up my notes now.
Because it might be skewed just because, I mean, we haven't done this in a while, and so my scale might be a little off, but
Here we go. Season 1, season 3, season 4, season 6. Oh no. Season 6 is a no-brainer. Season 6 is everything is 3 and above. You didn't have
right,
a single 2 or 1 in season 6.
right. Season 6 is
It's
my favorite season.
comparable to season 5 though.
Oh, okay. But
Season
I still
5 you had fewer.
I still really love season 6, and I'm
Yeah.
sure I also love season 5. You know, it's just when things started getting a little crazy.
Yeah.
So my question to you, we're at 2 hours here. Do we want to schedule another revival one?
I think that
Or
might be a good idea because I'm
I think
sure
it
there are
might be
people down
smarter to
there
do
who would
that so
love
that
to
we can
come up.
bring some. That way we can bring some folks up here. It's getting late, and I would love to you know just hang out with some folks that are on the beanbags and chat with them about the season and whatnot, and then we can dive into how we just we're stretching it. We're pulling as much as we can out of this series as
Completely
possible.
agree. But I will ask one more question before we do that. And I'm going to invite everyone to raise their hand. But I had a question from someone in the audience, and I'm pretty sure they're not going to ask it
Okay.
themselves. What changed for you the most from season 1 to season 7? What was there an impression or something? I know you've mentioned Lorelai, but other than Laura, has there been something that when you started in season 1, you did not expect you would get to where you are at season 7?
Season 1.
Mm-hmm. All the way
Hmm.
from the beginning of the show.
Um.
So how about we do this? While you ponder that, I'll
Yeah.
ask some people to come up and then we can discuss a little bit. Let me give
Mm-hmm.
you a chance to
Yep.
think about it. All right,
Yep.
so please feel free to raise your hand.
Come on up, Veronica.
Oh my gosh, I've missed you guys so much.
It feels good.
Oh, it's so good to be back. Hello. I didn't even know what was happening. And I was like, oh, we're on. I'm going to say hello.
Um. I'm trying to think what had changed for me the most. I mean,
The couch is still open, guys. If you'd like to raise your hand, please feel free. Come on up.
the thing that changes the most in any good narrative are the characters. And of those characters, for me, the like the one that changed the most for me personally was Lorelai, because Lorelai was a character that I wasn't all that invested in the early seasons, and I became so invested in her character in the second half of the series. But I would also say, similar for Rory. Like, in early parts of the series, I was way more like, I guess I really liked her personality and was, and in the later parts of the series, while I was really invested in her in the story, like in all of the drama that was being sort of drawn out of her life and whatnot. I was I just she became a little less of a character that I really was excited about. But that's just more like that. I mean, that's just that's good storytelling. Like changes your perspective on characters over the course of their time. I mean, it is weird that you would end with like kind of feeling that the Rory character isn't the great thing that you remember in the beginning, but she was a kid in the beginning, and as she ends the series as a woman going off into the world, I find it really compelling. But I said early on I couldn't imagine myself being friends with Lorelie. By the end, I could actually imagine being friends with Lorelie, but the opposite I felt for Rory.
Who's your most consistent character, John?
Really? That's interesting. So by the end, you couldn't imagine being friends with Rory?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe not. That might not be true. It's hard. It's just a hard one because you sort of began with like other than Lorelai. It's like but Lorelai is the thing that is most different for me from season one to the end. Like without a doubt, it's what I would say in anytime anyone would ask me that question, I'd be like, oh, Lorelai. Like I was not into her character in the beginning, and I was super into her character by the end.
Fair enough. Thank you.
I'm glad that you said that in the beginning. You were like, I can never be Lorelai's friend, and then towards the end, you were like, you know what? Maybe so. I think that is a very nice thought.
But you, sorry, if I remember correctly, you never really got there with Lorelai.
I never got there with Lorelai or Rory.
Right.
Yeah. I think I said before that I felt like Lorelai and Rory didn't know a lot about the world and the people around them for me to develop enough of a friendship with them. So I'd be bored of them. But they'd be entertaining to watch. I would definitely watch in the sidelines on like relational drama, hear what people say around the bend. I'd be like, oh, wow, that happened. Cool. Mm-hmm. Or I'm going to go see Cartillion perform. Like that would be. Wait, so then I do have one question about how you felt about the ending, like how it ended so abruptly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, apologies if you already covered this. I had some internet connection issues when you were covering the last 4 episodes. But how did you feel about it? Just kind of, after the 4 words, and then it's just boom, credits.
Oh, we didn't actually get into the revival. We decided that we're going to actually come back to the revival in a different fireside chat with Mary because we spent 2 hours talking about season 7,
Jonathan.
Which I mean, I sort of began thinking like, oh, season 7 and the revival, that's so easy. That's but I mean, again, I really like that pace. It allowed us to talk through episodes, really think about the scenes, and really reminisce in a way that I think is more enjoyable to listen to anyway. But I mean, the revival is the length of a full season, or not length of a full season, but it's like it's got a season. I mean, I think that it should have its own. It should have its own fireside chat.
It's like a half season length.
It's a half season, so it's like we I think our last one was like 3 hours long. We did an hour. It was over 3 hours long, right? Because we did like over an hour per per season. Here we got to do 2 hours for one season, and I think that is a nice that's a nice amount to put to a season. I mean, we would put like an hour into one episode every night. So we're gonna come back to that, and I'll let you know my thoughts on that at the next fireside chat.
Okay.
So does anyone disagree with John? Now's the time to say if you disagree with any of John's.
Yeah, if there's anything that you just think that I am just full of it.
John, I'm not going to say anything because it's already been said.
I don't even know what that means.
Remember how I feel about season 7?
Oh,
remember?
Season 7. Oh, right. You don't like season 7. I like season 7.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
No, I agree about liking season 7, but I don't like season 6. That is my least favorite season, and you rank that so high.
Yeah, might be my favorite season. I'd have to sort of go through season 5 and 6 again to really say for sure, but yeah, season 6, the drama of it all.
John, which one of the episodes, like I know you ranked quite a few high up there, but if you had to like pick one or two that really stand out the most to you, what would they be? Like your
Well,
favorites. If you were going to rewatch single episodes, what would you go to?
of the entire series or just this season?
Overall, the whole
Well,
series.
because I've already talked about like something. I mean, like Festival of Living Art. I love Cinnamon's Wake. From this season, I mean, there's one episode that is just like absolutely my favorite, and that is the the episode where what is it? Yours truly. What is the name of it? It's to whom it may
To whom it may
The
concern.
one with
to
the
whom it may
letter being
concern.
read.
To whom it may concern. I love that episode. I'd watch that again. And Hey Bale Maze. I would watch Hey Bale Maze again. That's another one. That's like that's a great episode for season 7 in that it really hits that perfect perfect balance of really great story, really engaging narrative, and then also really like awesome Stars Hollow world. So it's a really good one for season 7 to just like return to Stars Hollow and also get a little bit of drama.
It is a good episode. It was better than I remembered it being the first time, second time maybe I watched. I haven't watched season 7 over and over again. So there were some episodes that really surprised me. I'm like, oh, I liked this a lot more than I thought I did. Who's your most consistent character? Now, we talked about the ones that you thought that changed and stuff, but like who do you think like was, well, it's just probably Kirk because we all think Kirk.
Yep.
Well, I mean, of the 3 characters, of the, like 3 main characters, well, no, 4, right? Because I would put Emily in there as well. But like between Luke, Lorelai, and Rory, it's so clearly Luke. Luke is definitely the most consistent. Um, he's definitely grown, but the Luke we meet in season 1, hasn't changed that much outside of his life has gotten some like new richness to it. But personality wise, I feel like he's still the same guy you meet at the beginning. Whereas Lorelai really does, like, to me, kind of transform. She really does go through a bit of a metamorphosis because, like, all of that pain and heartache that she experiences in the later seasons seems to transform her a bit. And then Rory just completely transforms because she's goes from being a kid to being an adult, which usually comes with some transformation.
Yeah. Was there any characters that disappointed you though that you really liked early on that in the end you're like, oh, why did I like them early on? Or did
Well,
you not have that feeling at all?
Well, I think that probably the character that is that is the most that is probably Rory. You know, again, I really like her. I really liked her. I enjoyed the story. I like it was fun to watch, like Carl says. But you in earlier seasons you feel like Rory's confidant, feel like a friend going to school with her and all that. And by the end, I felt a little bit like an outsider. I felt like I was watching her from the outside, more of a voyeur of her exploits. And I guess it means that I just didn't feel comfortable being as much of a buddy as I felt in the earlier seasons. So probably her. Um, I was hoping to get more Babette. I felt so strongly about the Babette character going in. I thought she was really interesting, and I love that first Cinnamon's Wake. That first episode that really kind of gives her front and center placement, and then you don't really get much of her. Like, she just, you just sort of see her here and there, and that was a little disappointing. If I have to be totally honest, because I just loved her so much in that episode, and I think they could have just done so much with her. And I've said this before, but Michelle is just a character that I don't really understand why we didn't spend more time with him.
You feel he was
Why
underutilized?
way underutilized. Way underutilized. Like, I don't really remember much of Michel in the series except that he was at the inn. You know, you rarely got any real strong storyline like about him. There was the episode where his mother came to town. That was kind of the closest thing to the biggest Michel storyline. Um, you had little stuff like the winning of the camper. But that wasn't really a lot. Mostly he was just sort of there, like, for a funny little quip or something. And that's a shame because I think he's a really fascinating person. And if we had gotten to really go home with him a bit more, that's the thing, is like every other character we get to go home with them. We get to see them in their own familiar places. Jackson and Suki, um, Emily, everybody. But for Michel, we just only get him at the inn, and only in that context, and so I never really was able to develop a relationship to the character outside of, oh, he's just somebody that works for a character that I do have a relationship to.
We did learn one thing about him that was outside the inn was that he had breakfast at Weston's until Lorelai started showing up there
Yeah,
regularly at
yeah, but
Weston.
that still was,
I mean, but that was like the weirdest thing. It's the only thing because I always wondered, does he
but
live
that
in
sort of
Stars
felt like the
Hollow?
beginning of his workday. So it sort of
Yeah.
kind of still felt like it was the same. It just felt like, we really only get him within the context of work.
Yeah, did he even live in Stars Hollow? Did we ever learn
I
that?
don't
I can't even
know. I
remember.
don't know. I don't know anything about him. I really don't. I don't know. I mean, I would like to know. Can we get a spin-off series or something?
So it's not so much that you're disappointed that Michelle was underutilized. You're disappointed that we didn't get to see Babette more, which I agree with that one. And that probably had to do with the actor's schedule, maybe. But the story arc of Rory, or the development of Rory, was the most disappointing from beginning to end in the way that you felt about her at
No.
the end versus the beginning.
No, no, no. So I'm not disappointed with any story arcs.
Oh, okay.
So just to be clear, I think the show ultimately is the show that is as beloved as it is because it pretty much got things right.
You just didn't feel
And
like you were her buddy anymore. Like your
correct. Yeah.
feeling
I
about her changed.
yeah, I
Okay.
was totally engaged all the way to the end. I was very much engaged with her story arc, but by the end I was a voyeur. I was watching from the outside, and in the beginning I was at her side. Like, in the beginning, I felt like I was with her at Chilton, that we were, that, that you feel this sense of camaraderie with the character. That's what I meant when I said I could feel like I was friends with her earlier on, you know. Um, Whereas in the end, I didn't feel that connected to the world that she was in, the people that she fraternized with, and so I could just only watch it as a spectator, and in that way, it was really enjoyable. Like the way that Carl is saying, they're fun to watch. But unlike Carl, I actually did kind of feel a sense of closeness and relationship to Rory's character in the beginning. And that's why I do think that probably those earlier seasons become much more of a comfort place to go back to, because if if you feel like me, then those later seasons aren't really a home as much as you're coming to watch something like really interesting, which I appreciate a lot. But like, if I were to return to this series over and over again, I'd probably be more inclined to return to it in the context of Rory as this like good friend.
That's
I
fair.
I have a
I heard.
question that's sort of like on that, like that bounces off of that. Um as a consumer of content and a creator as well, do you feel like, because I have this conversation with friends all the time and I hear it all the time, that sometimes people don't like a show or they don't like a character because they're quote unlikable. And I always kind of feel like, so what? Like, just because they're unlikable doesn't mean that the content is bad. And so a lot of times people do sort of move on from something because they don't like a character. So, like, what are your feelings on that? Because I feel like you're saying, you know what? I didn't love who Rory became in a way, or wasn't like going to be her friend,
But
but
I
I
enjoyed
really,
what
really
but I
love.
enjoyed watching
Right,
it. Yeah.
right.
So my perspective on that is that sometimes people get confused by an unlikable character and a character. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little presumptuous saying that, but this is the way I feel. That and I'm gonna use a show that I did feel this way about, where I was like, I just really can't watch this anymore. I don't really like the character, and it's House of Cards. Um, I I got through like the first season I found really compelling, and then I just started to fall off of it. Now, like on the surface, it might look like really the main beef that I have is that our protagonist in House of Cards is this like just nasty human who like does these really awful things. But that's what we see in Breaking Bad, for example. And I loved Breaking Bad. The difference, though, is that in at least what I saw of House of Cards, because I eventually I couldn't continue. Um, I was missing vulnerability. I felt like Frank Underwood was invincible. And because of it, I was totally bored every episode because I just sort of felt like, oh, well, he's just going to somehow win the day because he's just like, there's nothing vulnerable about this character. Whereas even though Walter White is doing all these just things that are just awful and really ultimately like hurting the people that he's supposed to be helping and loving, his family, there's so much vulnerability in the character. The character's always at risk of losing the day, and that, regardless of how you feel about his character, whether you're like, oh, he's such a gross person, is engaging to watch. That's what keeps us hooked on narrative. Is this person going to make it through? And with House of Cards, I never felt that because I always felt like, of course he's going to make it through. He's freaking invincible. He doesn't have any vulnerability. I have heard that in later seasons that actually is not the case, but I never got there. I got through like two seasons. I was just like, okay, like like this just doesn't feel like it. So the same would apply here, right? Just because I'm not, really connecting to the Rory character as a, as a like that, I may have some distaste for her character in ways. She's still struggling, and her vulnerability, like, written into the narrative, where she's trying to get things and then not succeeding, or then succeeding, after a lot of failure, that just is compelling to watch, regardless of whether love the character or not as a character. And so, again, that's what I mean when I think that sometimes that's confused, right? That, like, what they're saying is less like, I don't like this character, and more what they're saying is that this character is not that compelling to watch.
Totally. I completely get that.
Did you watch House of Cards?
Oh, I feel like I have the same feeling as you because I started it and then I could not continue.
One episode. I watched one episode and went, nope. Someone sold it to me as it's West Wing with more daggers, and I was like, nope, not even close.
I must admit, I do like what you said about, and I appreciate that question that you had, Diana, because I feel as if, with looking at the main Gilmore Girls characters, there there can be a type of thing that can happen in the conversation where it's kind of like, okay, well, you love Lorelai and Rory, or you kind of tolerate Lorelai and Rory to watch everyone else. Like, some fans can have that point of view, that feeling. But with Lorelai and Rory, they do a lot of things. There's a lot of actions that they do that I feel like were relatable, as at least from my upbringing and my background. The fact that they were eating, like, almost every single time they were talking, they were eating, they were sitting waiting for food, eating, like,
Oh my god,
they
that's
knew
hilarious.
the owner of the place. Yeah, like, they knew the person of the place. They're probably going out off hours. Like, that was relatable for me. It's like, oh, my grandmother knew the owner of the KFC on the east side of town. Like, like, my mom and my sister are like best friends with the people who own the taco place that's like 3 blocks away from our house. Like, we knew the people. The fast talking, oh my god, the amount, like, for how slow my speech is now compared to how I was when I first went to college. Yeah, watching Gilmore Girls was very relatable in that regard, because I was like, oh, they're speaking fast, to the point where I think nowadays people are making fun of my millennial generation for speaking too fast and sound like a YouTuber, because, like, somehow, some way, we all got it from Gilmore Girls, I guess. Um, but yeah, like, that was a relatable thing, and there's so many other um just like kooky things that they do that just were really relatable to me, that made me go, I like y'all. But then, like, it would be the mental processes on how they handle relationships or big events and things like that that would make me go, ooh, y'all a little messy. And I don't like to live my life like I'm on a TV show and y'all literally, like, you literally have a whole TV show about y'all's lives. So that would be where I'd be like, I'd be more of a spectator, but I wouldn't be friends with you, because I'd usually not be friends with the people who would have a whole TV show revolved around them. And that would be where it would go with, like, Lorelai and Rory, and where I would understand it with, like, where the fans are coming from.
But
Like,
isn't
it'd be cool to say hi to them at the coffee spot, but
I mean, the whole idea of characters, and to be clear, I should say, like, because I actually don't really feel like Lorelai and Rory are unlikable characters. Like, I'm not
right.
suggesting that at all. Like, I for the most part, really care about both of them. I just feel a little disconnected from the Rory character later in the series, and I feel very connected to her as a friend in earlier seasons. That's it. But I will say that, like, just talking about the unlikable thing, There's a whole genre of television, reality television, that is all about putting like people who we're supposed to recognize as being unlikable or somebody that you would not be friends with. That is just, you cannot look away. You are just absolutely drawn in. Um, without naming names of actual shows. I'm sure we can all think of a reality show with characters that were like, oh, I would never in a million years be friends with those people. But oh, do I enjoy watching that, right? So I really don't think that likability of a character has much to do with whether or not you are, you know, whether you feel the urge to continue watching their story. I think that it's I think that, struggle is, we all relate to struggle because we've all struggled. So when we watch a story about anyone, regardless of whether they're somebody who we would be friends with or that we find to be a little annoying or distasteful, when we see anyone struggle, there's just a part of us that just instinctively can't help but watch.
That actually leads into a question I was gonna ask. So I guess I'm just asking this for the room. Would y'all see this as, like, especially for Gilmore Girls, that relatability would be more of a key thing on, like, pulling us into the characters and then seeing them kind of struggle through certain obstacles in their lives that would keep us around?
Yeah. I mean, I would say though that, Lorelai and Rory begin as characters that, you know, Lorelai doesn't, like, I don't relate to Lorelai early in the series, but I recognize that she speaks definitely speaks to many people, and there are millions of people who have watched Lorelai Gilmore season one and been like, "Oh, I love this woman, and I'm here. I'm going to continue watching the story, for that reason." So I'll just say that regardless of how I feel, regardless of how Carl's feeling, I recognize that, like, what gets us interested in watching a story at all is usually, like, we find something about the character that we can relate to or that we have some interest in. And then once they start to struggle, that's when we can't that's when we're hooked, because if we already care in some way for them, the struggle is the part that we want them to overcome. I just want to make that, like, because I don't want it to I don't want to suggest, I mean, I don't want to suggest that my feeling about Lorelai early on is actually even the major. Like, I actually think that I'm in the minority. I don't think the show would be what it is if most people came to it annoyed with Lorelai. I think most people come to the series and they are like, I love her and I want to be her friend.
I
Most
am
people
not
come to
most
the
people.
series and are annoyed with Emily,
Right, sure,
which
because
you came to the
which is
series
by design,
loving her.
because Emily, in early seasons, is an antagonist of the character that we're supposed to care about.
Yeah, which is why, like, you were also different in that sense
Right,
because you
I
were
was
in love with
into
her from.
to, yes.
John and I had
And
the same
the thing
opinions
to
in the beginning. It was refreshing to meet somebody else who did not love Lorelai more than Emily. I'll tell you that because I've always been kind of on the outside of that thing myself. Not that I hate
But
Lorelai.
but then there's also
She just
lots
wasn't
of
my favorite.
other things. I mean, the world of Stars Hollow is super unique. The all of the pop culture references are really fun. The comedy, the jokes, it's a full package. It's not any one thing that gets you, like, in love with the show.
Well, you were talking about John. You were talking about how at the beginning, you felt, like Lorelai was less relatable, Rory was more relatable. What struck me, certainly in the, let's say, the first 3 seasons before Rory gets into Gale, that a lot of the things that made Rory so clever and accomplished and well-read and witty came from Lorelai. I mean, you think about it. Lorelai didn't at that point didn't even have a college degree. You know, she hadn't even, I guess she had gotten her GED at some point, but was clearly well read enough and was enough of an influence on Rory. And I guess maybe because I'm a mom myself, I'm always struck by that.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
So even
And
if you don't like Lorelai, you can recognize the positive influence
mhm.
she had on Rory.
Yeah, for sure, I do. For sure, that's. I mean, I think that there's no question. And she's an awesome mom. She's a really awesome mom. There's no doubt about it. Um, and she did a great job raising Rory. Um, but you can separate that from other
Oh,
parts. I mean,
oh, absolutely.
she's not only defined as a mom on the show. She's defined as a
Oh,
friend. She's
absolutely.
defined as a coworker. She's defined as a love interest. And in some of those ways, those were the areas where I probably had the most kind of annoyance early on with the character.
Yeah,
But certainly not.
that's fair. A
Yeah,
very
certainly not with her
accomplished
as a mom.
person
She was an awesome
who
mom.
makes some less than optimal choices.
Right.
I think the one thing that I noticed that I don't think that I got answered when watching the series and rewatching it with y'all was how is it that Lorelai got so connected with her daughter, but was able to kind of like have the luxury to develop friends who understood her fully as well. I think that was where I was confused and I started to I don't know, kind of like distance myself from Lorelai Gilmore, the character, and started to come into reality to what I was watching while watching Gilmore Girls, mostly because of my background and my mother, where I would see, oh my God, my mom have all of these different identities and her growing up in a different generation before mine, they definitely did not get seeing her as whole. But when she would come home, she would like vent to talk about everything under the sun was us. So then us as her kids would see her as whole. So then us being her best friend and vice versa made more sense because we saw her as a full human being. Because that was, she just talked to us like that. It was conditioned that way. And I tried to understand that with Rory and Lorelai, but then I'm like, wait, there's Suki and there's Luke and there's kind of like these characters in the town where she could talk to them. Well, I mean, mostly just Suki and Luke, but like she could talk to them as like a full-fledged human being. So I think that's where the disconnect started to come in. But again, overall, she's a very entertaining person to watch for me.
But I think you answered your own question because she does only have Suki and Luke. So Suki's the person she was with at the inn for endless hours of days. And Michelle, actually, I would put Michelle in there too. And Luke, I don't think has as close a connection at the beginning as we have now with him at the end. Like at the beginning, she didn't even know about his past girlfriend. She didn't know what his relationships were like. I think Luke and Lorelai relationship at the beginning gives the impression of a deeper connection or intimacy than there is. So I actually think her connections were quite limited at the beginning.
So then, mm, so then, what was it? What was up with the limitation with her and Suki? Just Suki working at the end too
Yeah,
much.
well, I mean, I don't know about you, but I have some friends at work who probably know about what's going on in my head a little bit more than my husband at times because they see my immediate reactions to the situations I'm dealing with right then and there. And so clearly Suki was a witness to that and they felt a bond through that. They built a bond.
Mm. Yeah, I guess it's still kind of fuzzy in my head because then at the end of the day, she still has Suki.
And I don't know that her connection to Rory is as, like, I know she says to Emily once that, we're best friends always, but I don't think she was best friends with her in the same way at 5 years old that she is with her at 16 years old. So that's probably the time period when the friendship with Suki built far more than it was with Rory. Rory's best friendness situation probably started when Rory was a little bit older and she could actually, share in the same movies and the same interests and the same things. So, off the top of my head, I'm thinking like 11, 12, maybe, not 5.
Mm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I guess I would mostly take it like seeing the relationship head on is that like they just
Hi,
do a lot of the same.
hi guys. Mary, I wanted to add on to that. There's actually a deleted scene that you can find on YouTube, and I'm sure everybody has probably seen it. But the connection that she has with Rory at a very young age, it shows that as it's actually showing in Dear Richard and Emily. They go through the um they go through the hotel, and she says something like, I want this and that, and that, or I think like I want a pony or I want whatever, and then she says whatever you want, baby Jane, that kind of thing. But it shows her as a very young mother at the time probably 17, 18, and that she is like a full mother and not her best friend. And later on they become best friends probably at 16, because I think at that point she's thinking, when I was 16 I had her, and now I want to change my relationship that I had with my mother, that she had with Emily, and now to be with Rory. So I think you're kind of right, when her relationship is just so different when she's little and growing up until she becomes 16. At that point they become the friends, or she wants to be the mom that is the friend and not the mother, like strict mother.
That's very interesting, Jessica. No, I didn't know there was a deleted scene. Are
Yeah,
those are
there's
those not on the DVDs? Because I had all the DVDs. I
I
didn't.
don't think it's on I don't think it's on the DVD. I think I saw it on YouTube. But it's a lot of the flashbacks, like in Dear Richard and Emily, how they do the flashbacks, and they cut that scene, but you can find it in a deleted scene. I think I found it on YouTube.
We know how John loves the flashback.
Yeah, I wasn't that keen on the flashback.
But yet you were keen on season 7.
I mean,
I
so
was.
while you guys were talking, I went back and I have to tell you, John, your lowest ranked seasons would actually probably be 2 and 4, which is funny because 4 has your like favorite episode of all time. But when I look at your lowest ranked, like seasons 1, 3, and I want to say 6 have absolutely no ones in them. They're all 2, 3s and aboves. Whereas, um, what did I say? 2 and 4, 3 or 4 have ones in there.
Yeah, I mean, two. I remember two being having a lot of episodes in there that it wasn't so much that I didn't like them. I remember it just they faded for me. They were, and I don't know. Maybe that won't be the case when I watched again. Maybe when I watched again, I'll enjoy something about just being there in Stars Hollow that I didn't quite have the first time because I was sort of experiencing Stars Hollow for the first time, um, really experiencing it as a resident for the first time. I don't know what it is about season 4 that would have gotten such low marks. I mean, it has my favorite episode in it. for sure. And there was a lot of really great stuff with the band. That's when we get Gil for the first time. That's, like a lot of really fun stuff. But I don't really know. I really don't know what I don't know what it was about season 4 that would have. It also has that like really awesome end, you know. Um,
Yeah,
the
we're
the
all
e-
entitled to our opinions. It's okay.
yeah, the
I was
end of
looking
season
at the
4 is
numbers.
Hmm.
awesome. The end of season 4 is awesome, and the beginning of season 5 really awesome. But I don't know. I mean, that's just I guess just where the chips landed.
Mary, if you don't mind me asking, what rankings from like highest to lowest seasons? What are John's like rankings? Do you have that on? In your,
I can put it up, but I can tell you right now, number 6 is tops. There's like no doubt whatsoever. Number 6, there's none higher than that. He has
It's the tops.
no zeros. He has no ones, no twos in number 6. And see,
It's the bestest season. It's the tops. I love that
I
season.
can
I can
feel
tell you.
sand rolling his
So, John, I want to thank you so very much for this
Yeah.
and for the offer to extend it to another one because that was
Yes.
so amazing.
I love
I
doing that.
actually have to run as well, and I'm sure you do too.
Yep.
So, thank you everyone for joining us. And thank you, John, for having us. And stay tuned, guys. We're going to have one more fireside chat sometime
That's
soon.
right. And quick plug for all of our Slate shows. We have we're in the we're in the thick of Drag Race right now. RuPaul's Drag Race. That's a lot of fun. We're moving into the second half of the season, and so things are really getting they're getting exciting. Please
Woohoo.
join us for that if you can. And we are watching Firefly. Oh
Yay.
my goodness. It is a good show. Carl, have you watched Firefly?
Yeah, I saw it in I saw it when I was watching through all of my mom's DVD box sets, and that was one of the
Oh
shows that I picked.
my goodness, it's a good show. If you are not watching Firefly with us, I really, 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 really highly, highly, highly recommend it. It is science fiction, but it is also Western.
It's
Like
very
it's a
character
total
driven.
Western. It's science fiction, but with oozing with heart, like oozing with heart. Really, really big, complex themes of humanity and just a really wonderful world like that just has you asking all kinds of questions about the little nooks and crannies of it. I just absolutely love it. And if you are have if you have considered watching it, but like it's not my genre, I really really can't recommend it more highly. I'm loving it. I haven't had a show that has pulled me in so quickly as this show has, and it's not just because I'm a sci-fi nerd. I really know it because plenty of sci-fi doesn't grab me like that. It's because it's really 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 well written. And
And we're
then of course
starting Maisel.
we are about to start Maisel. We're going to
Woo!
start Maisel. We're about to start Marvelous Mrs. Maisel on Tuesday. That is going to be awesome, and I think that I hope that it draws in the same regulars that we had during our Gilmore run. That's going to be on Tuesdays and Saturdays, so Tuesday evenings, like the way we were doing our Gilmore, but like a little earlier. We're going to always start at 6 now, which aligns better for the winter anyway because it gets darker earlier. And then Saturdays we're going to be doing those morning ones. So we're going to do one on Tuesday, one on Saturday, but the Saturday one is going to be in the morning at 9. But we're also doing a Wednesday morning rewatch of the Tuesday evening one. And that is going to be actually led up by our community member Lee in Ireland. And that is to help our international folks who have a hard time staying up uh, that late, allows them to catch up on that Tuesday night episode, so that when they come on Saturday, we are all up to speed. So that's going to be great. We're going to be doing season 1 of that, and then we're going to be doing season 2 and 3 in our next slate in the new year. So lot of exciting stuff coming. Please, please, please join us.
Yes, and I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Carl. I was just gonna do the.
Oh yeah, I just had one question for John and Diana. Since I remember that y'all showed interest, are y'all showing up for the event on the 21st?
Yeah, I am.
For Roy's True Love?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
That's so Carl's doing a fast talk. He's going to be hosting a fast talk, so he's going to have some folks who are going to be making the case for their preferred team, which should be fun. So that's going to be on November 21st. You should definitely show up for that. I do have to run though. Thank you so much, Mary, for doing this, and I can't wait for the next one.
thank you, John. And I'm gonna do a private plug here. Say if you want to read Pride and Prejudice, we're starting tomorrow, 10 p.m. Eastern. So, guys, I'm going to go ahead and close the room, but please feel free to open a lounge room if you guys would like to keep discussing things. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you, John. And like I said, stay tuned. We will have one more of these coming up soon.
Thanks,
Good night,
guys.
everybody.
Night,
Good
night, everyone.
night.
Good night. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, John.
Good
Thank you
night.
all. Have a good night.